been a little bit, just think almost or spot on a week. I've seen some other friends, people I admire, been writing a lot more, putting out more content, kind of changing up how they present it too, which I think is cool. It really is a skill I admire so much, especially just because of the habit and how consistent they can be. I think that's impressive. That kind of consistency is really cool. I also was really thinking about the intro music for this. If there's anybody out there who listens to this and can make music and would want to make me intro music, I would be so flattered and grateful. I dug up a song that I made a really long time ago on GarageBand, aspiring DJ. And it's terrible, but it's also cool to listen to. It's kind of funny. Maybe I should just throw that on here, but I don't care. I mean, you could just make a, like a really nice melody, making fart sounds out of your armpit. Make a little intro out of that. Throw that on here. Might be fitting for me, but I really do. Once I was listening to this podcast, it has like a nice little intro. One of their, I guess, hosts. What do you call it? Podcast host, speaker. One of the people on the podcast, I guess host. He's a musician, makes music, so I always really like the music in their podcast. But yeah, been a little bit. Had some cool ideas. Finally started, and I said we started this entire thing under the impetus of no lists. But one of the things that had started to happen to me, it's not an excuse, it just is I would have an idea or kind of crystallize a handful of thoughts that I'd have throughout the day. Oh, that's a really good podcast idea, I tell myself, and then there you go. There's some intro music. And then I have this really good idea. I could talk about this on the podcast, and I wouldn't write it down. I would just disappear. And so now I've started tracking them and getting those ideas down more consistently, which is good because I'm a pretty decent note taker just in general life things. People recommend you stuff. Hey, watch this, listen to this, do this. And everyone's like, oh yeah, I can't wait. And you just never do it. Or maybe you watch one out of the 15 things you get recommended. And I know all the self-help gurus out there is that you can't say yes to everything. You got to say no more than you say yes. So you can't give all your time to all this stuff. Otherwise you won't be grinding and successful, and you won't wake up at 3 a.m. and take an ice bath and do 900 push-ups. But anyway, so sometimes I hate forgetting stuff like that. So I kind of came up with a nicer system to do that. A little collection of notes on ideas so I can keep these consistent, because I don't always just want to get on here and ramble, even though that's kind of what it seems like. And I wanted to start off with the accountability one. And the other day we're at the dog park, and it's so funny. We talked about this before. The concept of success is the greatest. Success is an easy place to hide, best place to hide. And you can be really good at a thing, and people say, "Oh wow, when you're doing this thing," and maybe you're like, for me, it was like when I was competing in CrossFit, and I competed on teams, I could compete on individual. One of the things I felt like I was really good at, I had really good awareness of everything that was going around me. I could keep track of a lot of things going around me, as well as what I was doing myself, and focus on what I was doing, especially in the team environment. And also one of the things I think the team I competed on both with CrossFit New England and CrossFit Mayhem is when things would go wrong, we were all really good at staying cool and assessing the situation and finding the next step forward, finding the right path forward. And people say, oh, wow, you handle that chaos so well. You must be so good and so calm. And I think when you're really good at certain things, again, I've talked about how it doesn't always transition. And I generally feel like I handle that kind of stuff really well. And the other day, man, we were at one of the places I don't is with the dogs. And we were at the dog park, and we were kind of letting our dogs roll around off leash, and they were being really good. And usually we do that because a couple of the dog parks we go to, no one's there. And so, and typically when people show up, we see them pull in or whatever, we see somebody in the distance, boom, dog's on the leash. And just makes things easier. But we like to give them a little off leash time so they can sniff around. And man, and they came around this corner and some people had pulled in and we didn't see them and we were kind of being careless and the dogs just took off and they didn't return on recall. And that was really annoying. And I kind of just panicked and ran over to them like a spaz, a group showed up with a bunch of golden retrievers and they were all very friendly and nice. Fortunately, I think I was more embarrassed for everyone than anyone else there. I'm like, oh, hey, I'm sorry. And they're like, oh, it's totally fine. It's, so-and-so friendly. And our older male, was greeting he thinks he's like the mayor of every space. He's kind of like, I think he's like a little insecure, but also really friendly. And when he was young, we gave him a lot of free time. So it's stuck in his head where there's new dogs. It's just totally cool for him to go over and say hi. Like we kind of let him build that habit. And we've been working on it. But anyway, so he's going to saying hi to all the dogs. There's one of the dogs in the back of this owner's car, and he just hops halfway up into the car, happily sniffing them. And in my head, I'm like, thank goodness these are nice dogs, and these owners are at least, on the outside, externally understanding and being patient with us. And I said thank you to them. And man, I felt so embarrassed about this entire episode. And I was, on the way home, and I was just like being a little bitch about it. And I was just kind of like spiraling, and I was telling Cassandra like, oh, well, what if they report us and say that we're bad owners? And she probably just thinks I'm a crazy person. But for some reason, that's one of those things I take super personally. I'm not really calm about, is when we have mistakes with them. And at the end of the day, it was like everything did turn out fine, and we have a correctable path forward. And the answer is really simple and straightforward. And at the end of the day, it was like all the dogs were good, and the younger one actually had better recall than the older one. So that's a huge win. And, I think I've said this quote before, but you only get stressed out about things that you can, things that you have control over. And I don't have direct control over the dogs, but, when I look at that moment, and I'm like frustrated with the dogs and embarrassed, and why didn't these other owners have their dogs on leashes, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, James, what could you do differently? Well, you could do more leash time at the dog park. I'm a huge believer that like, if you want a good dog, you walk them on a leash a lot and you practice really light leash corrections and obedience on a leash, and it makes really fantastic dogs. Dogs that can walk well on leashes. It's a great way to train them, and it's a great way to gain respect and develop a relationship with a dog. Anyway, in my opinion, at least the more I've done it, that's what I found. So I can do that. The other thing I can do is like, I can stop and assess the situation and really realize like, what is going on here? Like, why do I need to panic and react? The only reason I'm panicking and reacting is because I know deep down inside, I feel guilty because I've been slacking on some training stuff. Like I deliberately know that I've been lazy, slacking on some of the podcast stuff, slacking on some of the training stuff, sometimes for valid reasons. And valid, I just mean there have been other things I've wanted to prioritize lately. And I think that's totally fine, but I haven't been honest with myself about how I've been allocating that time. So I'm all just frustrated and flustered, and I'm really not annoyed at the dogs or how Cassandra reacted or how these other owners reacted. I'm really just annoyed with myself. And it's good in those moments to just sit there and take a deep breath and think about like, what am I really frustrated and upset about in this moment? Because nothing happened. Nobody got hurt. Everyone was happy. It looked like they went and had a good walk. We went home and had a good evening. But really what this is about is me being frustrated with myself and not like walking myself through the outlet of how to make it constructive. So that was super, I was just a little accountability thing. And I think we have so many moments throughout the day where we get frustrated and maybe angry at something or pent up at something. And when you really look at it, this is just you being frustrated with yourself. And I finally said that to Cassandra. I said, I'm just frustrated with myself because I know I've been slacking with the dogs. And I was being a little careless in that situation. Because I was lying to myself about not slacking with them. So it's a good lesson. One of the reasons I like the dog example so much, obviously it's a big focus of mine. I think all of us have something we could fit into that bucket. But one of the first dog trainers I worked with, Bob, he said, dog training is more, when you're training somebody's dog, he said it's more about training the human than it is the dog. And it's like, that's one of the reasons I like it as a mirror or a point of reflection for me, is because typically how I'm acting, if the dog behaves or misbehaves or something like that, or I feel like they didn't meet some expectation of mine, it's really a mirror for some behavior of mine that I am either doing well or not. I think that's really interesting. But that's actually not why I wanted to talk about in this podcast. I was doing some I don't know. We've talked about them as being menial chores, but just the recurring chores, like the stuff that you kind of just need to keep doing to keep the ball rolling, doing the dishes, feeding the dogs, vacuuming, cleaning up such and such. Maybe it's driving somebody to the school bus every day. I don't have to do that, but something that maybe some people could relate to. Putting out your clothes, packing a bag, so on. It's a long list of stuff there that we're all used to. And I think I was doing something. I think I was either doing dishes or cleaning up after dinner, wiping the stove down, or maybe feeding I don't know, something like that. It was something in the kitchen. And I was kind of frustrated with the task. And I was like moving quickly and knocking things over and bumping into the cat, just being a little bit of a squid. And as I was doing this, I was thinking about like, hey, I've done this task a lot and I should be pretty efficient at it. I should, that word, I had an expectation that I can move fast at it and not make mistakes. And afterwards, I was like, what the hell is going on here? Because it's a simple task. It's something I've done a lot. And I realized, at least I think I realized, I don't know if this is true, but I really liked it, that rushing is not moving fast. Rushing is wanting the task to end. In some cases, far sooner than it can. Because I think you can move fast and be in the moment for that task. And that made me think rushing is about focus, not speed. And this carried back to the dog thing of like, I'm rushing, my expectation, I'm rushing to get them to have a certain behavior and response. That's not necessarily a task ending, but it's like the completion of a step of a task. And I'm not focused on, I'm not being in the moment of that task. And this whole concept of you can move fast and be in the moment, and rushing is about focus, not speed. And, I've heard that quote before of like, what is it? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And for the longest time, I thought that was really stupid. I get what people are getting at when they say it. But it's just like one of those little catchy phrases. And you're like, yeah, great, thanks. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. But when I think about it in the context of focus, when you're smooth, I take smooth as focused. You can be fast. When you're really zoned in on a certain task, you're present in that task, your ability to move quickly with it, I think can really be dialed up. And so when I see something about somebody rushing, or when I feel myself rushing, instead of me being like, I got to slow down. Because in some cases, if I want to rush, if I'm not focused on the task, slowing down makes it even worse. But that's because I'm trying to fix the wrong thing in my mind. In my mind, instead, it's like, well, what can I do here? This task is going to take X amount of time no matter what. So I'm just going to be really present with this thing. Chop these things, really, really well. Or focus on getting a certain shape in the chop, or get the temperature just right, or mix this thing just the right way so it has the right flavor, make sure the right seasoning ingredients are on there. And you can do all that stuff very quickly, especially if you're focused on it. But if your focus is somewhere else, because for whatever reason, because your focus wants to be somewhere else, like even if you consciously don't want the task to end you're working on, as soon as you move focus to somewhere else, that's what rushing is in my mind. So it's not necessarily about the speed you move, it's about how focused you are or not. And I thought that was pretty interesting. It's kind of helped reframe how I've approached the week and done things, and especially how I've put distractions in front of myself, especially if I'm working with other people. How do I focus on them? Because things seem to move a lot more quickly when I am focused. And when I am not focused, no matter how fast I move or try to move or talk, kind of feels like a mess. That's what rushing feels like. So there we are, creeping on number 90. So anybody out there, intro music, hit me up. More tomorrow.